Chapter 1841. Daisy smiled. That's all the more reason for me to sharpen myself up. Are you willing to leave no lace behind, though? Daisy was stumped. Zyla chuckled. If you want to return to your own country, it means you have to separate from no lace. You two will need to maintain a long-distance relationship. Are you not worried that your beloved Nolly will fall in love with someone else? Daisy was tongue-tied, and she grabbed the cup tightly. Suddenly, a chuckle rang out behind her. You should probably stop teasing her. Zyla turned her head around and saw Yorick standing behind her with Xena. She stretched her arm forward to get Xena and chuckled. I'm not teasing her. I'm just giving her a warning. Yorick looked toward Daisy and asked, so what do you think? Daisy pressed her lips thin and replied, I don't know. Both of you are still young. Yorick sat on the couch and said calmly, life is a long journey of trials and tribulations. If you two separate just because you're not staying together, it means you're not meant for each other. Daisy had been mulling over the things that Zyla and Yorick had told her ever since she left their house. She couldn't make up her mind, so she returned to the college to look for Freya. After hearing what she had to say, Freya narrowed her eyes and asked, is that what's bothering you? Daisy nodded and rested her head on her hands. If I return to my country, it means I have to separate from Nolly. What if he falls in love with another woman while I'm away? Freya put her hand under her chin and asked, I don't think he would do that. I mean, what if? Then what if you fall in love with another man first? Daisy was stumped. I won't do that. Freya smiled. So what makes you think he would do that? Daisy did not know what to say. That's right. Why would she think No Lace would fall in love with another woman while she was not around? Daisy, why don't you go and ask what No Lace thinks about it? Freya said as she shrugged helplessly, rather than going around asking other people for their opinions, it's what he himself thinks that counts, isn't it? It was only then the fog in Daisy's head cleared. She rose to her feet and said, you're right. I'll go look for him now. Freya watched as Daisy walked away in a hurry and shook her head. Then, a message popped up on her phone screen. When she saw the message, she nearly threw her phone away. In the end, she stood up and walked to the front desk to buy 2 cups of Americanos. At the Victoria Business College, Freya came to the basketball court with 2 cups of Americanos and took her seat in the audience seats. Colton was playing basketball with a group of people. He was wearing a white uniform, was sweating profusely, and his thin jersey was stuck to his back. Beads of sweat could be seen dangling from his short hair, and he looked particularly attractive right now. When he lifted up his jersey to wipe his sweat, he revealed the lean muscle around his abs. There was no other audience other than her alone on the basketball court. The people sitting opposite Freya whistled at her and teased, hey, sweetheart. Are you here for me? As soon as the man finished speaking, a ball hit the railing beside him, making him jump up in fright. The man turned his head around, and Colton said indifferently, sorry. The ball slipped off my hand. His friends who were sitting beside him had seen clearly what he did. The ball had not slipped off his hand. He had thrown the ball toward that man himself. Colton took a rest and walked up to the audience seats. Freya handed both cups of coffee to him. However, he just took one of them, opened the cover, and drank it without putting in the straw. His friend came over, and when he saw another cup of coffee in Freya's hand, he smiled and asked, is this for me? Freya was going to give him the cup of coffee, and he was about to take it from Freya, but Colton stopped him. It isn't for you. Chapter 1842. Both of them turned their heads to look at Colton and asked at the same time. Then who is it for? Colton was obviously not happy with the surprising bond between the two. He snatched the cup of coffee away from Freya's hand and said, they are both for me, Oh, you have a problem with that? His friend scratched his head and waved his hand. All right. I'll go buy one myself. When Freya was about to leave, Colton stopped her. Where are you going? She smiled. I already brought you the coffee that you asked for, so I can leave already, right? You promised me that you would listen to everything I tell you until I say stop. Colton approached her as a smile appeared on the corner of her lips. I haven't said stop yet. Freya took a deep breath as she tried her best to suppress the rage that was building inside of her. Not only did she lose the surfing game to him a month ago, but he also saved her. She had agreed to his request to be his personal assistant. However, he hadn't said how long that would last, and he had said it depended on his mood. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a sunny or rainy day, whenever she received a text message from him in the past month, she knew he was up to no good. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and asked with a smile, so what else do you need me to do for you, Mr. Colton? Wait for me here. After he emptied the coffee, he threw the rubbish at her and said, please throw them into the trash can. He turned around and walked down the audience seats. Freya's face sank, and she sneered coldly while looking at her. She swore inwardly that she would get her revenge one day. Knowles and Tristan came out of the meeting room. Edison was waiting for him in the corridor, and he nodded at him. Mr. Knowles. Tristan nodded back at him. He turned around to remind Knowles of his work before leaving. Knowles turned his head sideways and asked, have you found anything on Rocky? Edison replied, it's the Skull Club. Knowles stopped in his tracks and squinted. He had heard of the Skull Club before. They were an aggressive organization and could be found in nightclubs and casinos. If the Skull Club's people killed Rocky, things would be entirely different. He flicked through the blinds in the office corridor and vaguely saw the figure inside. A staff member came out of the office and said, Mr. Knowles, Ms. Vanderbilt wants to see you. Knowles pushed the door and went into the room. Daisy was sitting with her back facing the door. She was leaning against the couch, and it seemed like she had been waiting there for a long time. He approached her from the back and called out to her. Daisy. Daisy turned her head around. Nolly. He knew that something must be troubling her, so he sat beside her and asked, what's wrong? She lowered her head. In fact, she had thought a lot while waiting for him. Nolly, I can apply for early graduation. He was stunned for a moment, and then he chuckled. Isn't that a good thing? Daisy turned around to look at him and continued. But I have to go back to Zlokova after I graduate. Nolly, I want to know what you think about it. Knowles fell silent for a moment. He lowered his head and said, Daisy, what I think won't change your decision. If you want to know what I think about it, then all I can say is that I want you to leave everything behind and stay here with me. Daisy was stunned. He went closer to her and said, but I won't stop you from doing what you want to do. After all, as I told you earlier, you can do whatever you want. Her pupils trembled, and something clutched at her heart. Then will you fall in love with another woman? He looked fixedly at her face and asked, you don't believe me? She shook her head. No. He chuckled. Why would you ask then? He pulled her into his arms and rested his chin on her head. Daisy, I want to give you a future where you won't have to worry about anything, but I can't guarantee it now. It's good for you to return to your country as well. When I've reached that height, I'll go look for you. Chapter 1843. Daisy buried herself in Nollis' chest and clutched at his clothes. You need to promise me. Promise me that you won't fall in love with another woman. A laugh spilled from Nollis' throat as he said, I'll not fall in love with anyone other than you, Daisy. You can have my word. He looked toward the corner, and his gaze turned grim. He couldn't promise Daisy a good future since he hadn't gotten rid of Donald yet. Therefore, rather than letting Daisy stay by his side, it would be better for him to clear all the obstacles and bring the Knowles back to their feet first. When that happened, he would be able to go see her with his head held high. A week later, at the Hilton Villas. After Daisy submitted her graduation application to the college, she has been at home these days preparing her resume for management companies. Waylon made a cup of coffee, brought it to the study room, and put it on the table. He glanced across the monitor and said, "Why don't you return to Royal Crown? Our family owns it, so it'll be easier for you." "Nah, I'll pass on that," said Daisy. "Royal Crown is too familiar with us. Zester belongs to Uncle Hector. I don't want any special treatment. Therefore, I decided to go to Tenet Media, which isn't related to our family." Waylon frowned. Tenet Media? Tenet Media was a new management company. It was slightly inferior to either Royal Crown or Zester in Bassburg. Although it was a rather new company, it had a pretty good development in the past few years. The amount of investment in film and television took up 20%. The competition in Royal Crown and Zester was greater than that of Tenet Media. In other words, they needed to fight for resources. Due to their relationship with Royal Crown and Zester, people might think they were opening the back door for Daisy if she were to join either of the companies. Besides, what Tenet Media lacked wasn't resources, but outstanding artists. Therefore, it was a better choice for Daisy to enter Tenet Media. In the next few days, Daisy received a call from her country. It was a call from Tenet Media, and they told her that her application had been accepted. After all, Daisy was considered a high achiever in the drama, theater, and film course at Victoria Business College. She would be accepted no matter what companies she applied to. After that, Daisy updated her Facebook. #see you back at home. Roughly half an hour later, she updated her Facebook, and her fans began to comment on the post below. Waylon was making lunch downstairs. After she came down, he set up the table. It seemed to him that she was in a good mood, so he said, "Let me guess, you've been accepted?" She picked up a sandwich and said, "Of course. I'm the best." Waylon chuckled and ruffled her hair. "I know you're the best." "Oh yeah, brother." As if she remembered something, she raised her head. "If we're going back, does it mean that we have to stop renting this place?" She had been staying here for a long time. She was familiar with the house, so she was kind of reluctant to leave it. "I bought it." Daisy was stunned. "What?" Waylon poured her a cup of milk and continued. "We can stay here if we want to come back in the future. Besides, this is a good location. Even if we don't want it anymore after we buy it, we can sell it off. The price of the house will have the highest value as the economy changes. In any case, it's a good investment." Daisy was tongue-tied. Her brothers were as smart as their father. "Have you told Knowles that you're going back home?" he asked. Daisy nodded and smiled. "I have faith in Nolly. He'll come to look for me after he has settled everything here." Waylon looked at her and fell silent. Meanwhile, at the Knowles mansion, when Diana learned that Daisy would return to her country, she asked in surprise, "Knowles, are you really going to let her return to her country? Are you not worried that she will run away?" Chapter 1844. Knowles flipped through the newspaper and lifted his eyelids. "She won't be able to run away from me." Diana did not know what to say. Things wouldn't be so complicated if Daisy wasn't one of the Goldmans, and Knowles could marry her right away. However, the reality was that Daisy was someone of a special background. She was certain that Nolan wouldn't let her son marry his daughter that easily. Rick was making tea. After Diana went upstairs, he looked at his son. "Knowles, if you really like Daisy, and if she likes you too, you should just ask her to stay here." Knowles closed the newspaper and said faintly, "I can't guarantee her safety if she stays with me. This time, my enemy is on a different level than Zenobia." He did not think Zenobia was a threat, but his enemy this time was different. Rick was smart, so he instantly knew what Knowles was talking about. "What happened? Do you still remember Donald?" Rick's face sank when he heard the name. "Of course, I remember. His grandfather wasn't a good guy, but what does that have to do with him?" Knowles' gaze was deep as he said calmly, "He'll be my biggest obstacle. I must send Daisy away if I want to get rid of him." Rick was stunned. Meanwhile, at the college. In the library, Freya looked at Daisy and asked, "Are you really going back to your country?" Daisy nodded. "I've already submitted my resume to some of the management companies in my country. I'll go back in a few more days." Freya lowered her head and fell silent. "Freya." Daisy grabbed her hand and said in a serious voice, "You must help me to watch over your cousin. Don't let any women get close to him." Freya was caught between laughter and tears. All right. I'll let you know at the earliest if I ever see one, okay?" "That's more like it." Daisy smiled. Suddenly, she remembered something and pulled a gift box out of her bag. "This is for you." Freya was stunned. She did not take it from Daisy. "Why are you giving me a gift?" "I'm going back to my country, so I won't be able to keep you company anymore. You can consider this gift as our parting gift," she said as she pushed the gift box to her. "Don't worry, even though we're separated, I'll still miss you." Freya took the gift and said, "Gosh, just give me the gift. You're making me feel goosebumps all over my skin." The smile on Daisy's face deepened. Freya opened the gift box, and there was a watch sitting at the center. The dial was square and purple in color. There were crystal inlays with laser engravings of her initials. It was considered a custom-made gift. Seeing her hesitation, Daisy hastily explained, "Don't worry. This watch isn't expensive at all. It costs only about $550. I custom-made it from a website." This was considered the most affordable gift for her. After all, she knew very well that Freya was different from Lisa. If she gave a gift that was worth about a few $1,000s or so, Freya might not accept it. The most important aspect of a gift lies not in its worth but the heart of the sender. This was the thing that Maisie had told her in the past. Freya smiled and said, "Thank you. I like it very much." "It's good that you like it. Come, I'll help you to put it on." Daisy opened up the watch and put it on Freya's wrist. It fit the size of her wrist perfectly. "By the way, Daisy, when is your second brother going back?" asked Freya. Daisy was stunned for a moment before replying, "Why are you asking this?" Freya wanted to tell her that she couldn't take it anymore, but she did not want him to look bad in front of his sister, so she said, "I can't enjoy my life if he's here." Just when Daisy was about to say something, she raised her head and shuddered. "Do you want me to leave so badly?" Chapter 1845. Freya was rendered speechless. Geez, talk about the devil. Freya retracted her hand, ran her finger over the dial, and turned her head to look at Colton. "Why have you not graduated yet while your sister has already graduated?" "It's none of your business, right?" replied Colton. He looked at her watch for a few seconds and commented, "It looks good on you." Freya was stunned. If it were in the past, he would have criticized her whenever she took a gift from Daisy. Daisy cupped her chin with her hands and chuckled. "Of course, it looks nice on Freya. I was the one who picked it." Colton pulled a chair and took a seat. "When are you going back?" "In a few more days," replied Daisy. She paused for a few moments and continued. "Promise me that you won't bully Freya after I go back." Colton looked at Freya and chuckled. Then, he said to Daisy, "Why don't you ask her and see if I have bullied her or not?" He was saying this because he knew Freya wouldn't dare to speak the truth. Daisy looked at both of them suspiciously. Ever since they returned from their trip, the relationship between her second brother and Freya seemed different. Daisy received a call from Lavish, so she rose to her feet and said, "Nolly is looking for me, so I'll get going first." She took her bag, cleaned up the table, and left in a hurry. Freya also started to keep her stuff after Daisy left. Standing with his arms across his chest, Colton asked, "Why are you in such a hurry? You can talk to me as well after Daisy leaves." Freya lifted her eyelids and looked at him. "I don't have anything to talk to you about." She put on her bag, and just when she was about to leave, Colton stretched his leg forward to block her way. Thankfully, she reacted quickly and held on to the table to prevent herself from falling. They had made quite a big commotion, and the students in the library all turned their heads to look at them. Colton rose to his feet calmly and said, "I'll be waiting for you outside." Freya took a deep breath and commanded herself to calm down. After she came out of the library, she found that Colton was waiting for her in front of the car. He opened the door and said, "Get in." She did not get into the car. Instead, she crossed her arms in front of her chest and asked, "Where are we going?" "I want to buy a present for Daisy, so you're coming with me." Soon, they came to the largest mall in the city. This prosperous area was stocked with the world's top luxury brands. Freya followed behind Colton. Both of them had gone through several jewelry, cosmetics, perfume, and clothing stores, but none seemed to satisfy him. She felt it was weird. This was because Daisy had a lot of these things. Colton asked her to wait for him at the counter and followed the sales clerk to another place. Freya stood there and looked around. Suddenly, a necklace on the counter caught her attention. It was the 8 on stars that represented luck. The main focus of the necklace was a green malachite with a plaque in the shape of intertwined wheat. There was a diamond inlaid in the center of the 8 on star, and it was a new item released by Carlsberg, a luxury brand that produced jewelry. She took a look at the price. It cost about $15,000. When the sales clerk noticed her, she walked up to her and asked, "Miss, do you like this necklace? Would you like to try it on?" Freya smiled and replied, "It's okay. I'm just looking around." She turned around and walked toward another place. When Colton came out from inside, he was holding a bag in his hand. Just as he walked to the counter to pay for the item, he overheard a conversation between 2 sales clerks. "She doesn't have the money, but she's still here shopping for high luxury brands? Young girls nowadays are really pathetic. Most of them are born a peacock. Have you forgotten about the socialite who visited us a few days ago? She just took pictures of these items instead of paying for them." Colton frowned and turned his head to look at Freya, who was waiting for him outside. He seemed to know which girl these 2 sales clerks were talking about. Chapter 1846. Colton walked toward the 2 sales clerks and tapped his knuckles against the countertop. "Wrapped anything that the lady from earlier showed interest in. I'm buying every single one of them." The 2 sales clerks looked embarrassed. Freya waited outside for more than 20 minutes, looking down at her watch from time to the extent that her feet went numb. "If I were to know that this is the case, I might as well have chosen to stay in the car." 2 gift boxes were suddenly handed to her, and Colton's deep voice came from behind. "Hold them." Freya glanced at the bags, grabbed them impatiently, and turned around to face him. "Mr. Goldman, may we go back?" Colton looked at her. "Is there nothing that you want to buy?" "I won't use any of those items," she claimed. Colton scoffed and said, "For mercy's sake, if you don't have money, I can lend it to you." Freya chuckled and restrained her laugh immediately. "Do you think I'm poor?" He responded with a faint hum. "It seems so at the moment." She did not even blink. "Lend me a few $1,000,000 then." As soon as she finished speaking, a hint of sternness flashed across Colton's eyes, and his eyebrows twitched as a frown formed. "What did you just say? Don't you think I'm poor?" Freya's expression was unchanged, as if she was admitting her financial state generously. "I happen to be in need of a few $1,000,000, so Mr. Goldman, you might as well lend it to me. Anyway, this amount of money should only feel like a handful of loose change to someone like you, Mr. Goldman." Colton glared at her grimly, his gaze felt as sharp as swords. "Do you think you're worth that much money?" Even though he looked calm, Freya could feel the chill in his eyes, which felt murderous. She estimated it was because they were talking about money, which was a sensitive topic. Freya was only joking about it, however. Colton probably did not like women who only knew to talk about money when he was around because of his suspicious and sensitive personality. After all, his identity was a very obvious trait that he was born into. People who were born into a lot of glory and wealth were most likely to encounter plenty of hypocritical people and events, so she could not blame him for being mean. Freya turned around, paused for a few seconds, and laughed out loud abruptly. It's not up to you to decide whether I'm worth it or not. Everyone is priceless in their own way, and their worth can't be measured with money. No matter how rich you are, there are always things that you can't buy, not to mention that my financial state has nothing to do with you, doesn't it? With a straight face, he said, "What a lame argument." Freya shrugged. "I'm just telling the truth. If you think I'm short of money, who thinks that they're not short of money? If you dare to offer to lend me some money, I won't shy away from asking for it. Besides, it's you who brought it up. I'm not the one who's begging you to do so." Freya Pruitt. Freya had already walked away without waiting for him to speak. Colton was very frustrated, but she was the one person in the world who could irritate him with just a few words, as if she was born to restrain him. "I just can't see through this woman. She's definitely not simple-minded, but she's not complicated either. She's unpredictable, just like a fog. When you think she's that kind of person, she'll become another type of person in the blink of an eye. And when you want to see through her, you'll find out that you can't do so no matter what. When I treat her like crap, she's indifferent about it. When I treat her well, she doesn't appreciate it either. She just pisses me off." On the other side of the city, in a huge restaurant. Only 2 guests were eating in the restaurant, Daisy and Knowles. It was obvious that they had reserved the whole restaurant for themselves. Delicate tableware and wine glasses were placed on the white tablecloth, rose-scented candles had been lit, and the retro copper suspended ceiling and the exquisite oil paintings on the walls gave off strong colors and a glamorous atmosphere. Knowles rearranged the plates of dishes for her and moved her favorite food nearer to her. Suddenly, a shrimp was delivered to the front of his mouth. He paused for a bit, and his grin intensified. "This is the first time you've peeled a shrimp and fed it to me." Daisy whispered, "The main reason is that I didn't have a chance before this." Chapter 1847. Daisy and Knowles had only had a handful of opportunities to eat alone. There were people present most of the time. Thinking of this, she suddenly realized that she had never had a formal date with Knowles. And when she was a little distracted, she felt something soft and gentle on her fingertip. She regained her senses, and that was when Knowles bit her finger while he went for the piece of shrimp meat. A current jolted from her fingertip to her heart and numbed it. She pulled her hand back subconsciously and looked around. Upon seeing that her ears were flushed as she could not take a tease, Knowles' laughter intensified. Compared to her slight nervousness, he seemed very calm and composed. "Have you signed a contract with a company?" She nodded. "Yes, I've signed a contract with a new entertainment company." Thinking of something, she bit her fork and hesitated for a few seconds before asking, "Knowles, would you get angry if I were to get a romantic performance offer?" Knowles paused for a few seconds, then lifted his gaze. "I'll be jealous, but I won't stop you from accepting it. Since she's chosen to step into the entertainment industry, these incidents are inevitable. Only cowardly people will worry that somebody else will snatch their beloved woman away from them. I don't object to Daisy's entry into the entertainment industry, nor do I object to her taking on romantic performances. I'll support her in whatever she wants to do. Even if she needs me, I'll always stand behind her. It's not that I'm not a selfish person. All I'll do is give her enough sense of security and trust, pamper her infinitely, and spoil her to the point where she can't live without me. And if she gets tired of me, I'll play hard to get and become indifferent to her to reignite her interest and attention again. There are no tricks I can't play, only those she wouldn't expect." How would Daisy know that she had already walked down a path of no return? But when a man was willing to take the initiative to understand the nature of a woman's career and could be so considerate, generous, and tolerant about it, how could a woman not be moved? With that being said, Daisy made a decision on the spot. "Knowles, to avoid making you jealous, I'll try not to land any scripts that require me to act in intimate scenes. He trusts me, so I have to live up to his trust too." The corners of his lips twitched slightly, and he lifted his head. "Are you trying to comfort me? I'm being serious here." "Okay. His smile widened. In the evening, Nole sent her back to the Hilton Villas. The car was parked outside of the gate. She stopped the hand that was pushing the door and turned her head around. Noles. Noles responded languidly, The next second, Daisy threw herself at him and pecked him on the corner of his lips. Edison took a glance at the rearview mirror and was so frightened that he quickly shifted his gaze away and looked out the window. Noles was slightly stunned. In just a few seconds, he clasped the back of her head with his palm and sealed her lips. After entwining for a while, the two separated. Daisy's cheeks were as flushed as the sunset on the horizon, and when she noticed the coldness of her neck, she inadvertently lowered her head and was startled. A pink diamond ring was hanging from a silver chain. Noles wrapped her in his arms and pressed his cheek against her ear. The other ring is in my possession. Daisy Vanderbilt, you have to wear it all the time and mustn't take it off. Otherwise, I'll punish you. Daisy held the diamond ring hanging on the necklace, and her cheeks were on the brink of lighting up on fire. She then pushed the door, got out of the car, and ran away as if she was running for her life. Noles lowered the car window halfway, looked at her figure that disappeared into the courtyard, lightly wiped the corner of his lips with his finger, and smiled all of a sudden. A few days later, at Bassburg Airport, Daisy dragged her luggage and walked out of the exit slowly. The fans who came to welcome her held her sign up high and shouted, "Daisy E. Welcome home." Daisy grinned and waved at them. Outside the airport, she saw Quincy and the bodyguards who were waiting for her in front of several cars. The bodyguards stood in a row and nodded at her. "Young lady." Quincy took the luggage and opened the car door for her. She got into the car and did not forget to say goodbye to the fans, and the fans were thrilled. Chapter 1848. The paparazzi hiding in the shadows took a few pictures one after another. Several cars followed each other closely, driving toward the Goldman mansion at a reasonable speed. Daisy looked out the window. After living abroad for a few years, she returned to Bassburg again, but she realized that she was not used to it. She held the ring on the necklace in her palm and pressed her fist against her chest. The next time he comes to see me, I will have transformed too. At least I will no longer be the Daisy who can only stay behind him and be protected by him. I'll become the Daisy who can stand by his side confidently. At the Goldman mansion, Nicholas, Maisie, and Nolan were waiting in the living room until the familiar figure sprinted in. "Mom, Dad, Grandpa." With a smile on his face, Nicholas waved. "Daisy, you're finally back. Come over and let me have a look." Daisy trotted forward and stood in front of Nicholas. He took a good look at her and said with relief, "My granddaughter has really grown up and become more and more beautiful." Daisy wrapped her arms around his. "Grandpa, you still look so young after so many years." Nicholas was amused by her. "You even know how to make your grandfather happy now." Nolan cleared his throat faintly. "I thought you would be reluctant to return home." Daisy pouted. "I'm your and Mom's daughter. How would I dare not to come back home?" "Oh, you've realized that you're our daughter all of a sudden, huh? You've run into such a huge incident in Yarramore, and you didn't even know how to call back home to tell us about it. Sure enough, you've grown." Maisie glared at Nolan. "Our daughter has finally come back home. Why would you suddenly have so many opinions about her?" Nolan didn't dare to speak another word. Daisy dashed to Maisie's side, sat down next to her, and hugged her. "Mom, I missed you so much." Maisie stroked the ends of her hair and chuckled helplessly. "You're such a big girl now, and you're still acting so coquettishly. Do you do the same when you're with him?" Daisy was stunned. Knowing who Maisie was referring to, she lowered her head, and her cheeks flushed slightly as she said, "No." Nicholas came to his son's side. "Is Daisy really dating that kid from the Knolls?" When the old man wanted to gossip, no one could beat him to that. Even if Nolan was reluctant to admit it, it was the truth. He had always been on guard, but he still could not stop that Knowles boy from snatching his little princess from him. Back in the bedroom, Maisie helped Daisy put her luggage away. Waylon told us that you'd come back this time around in order to enter the entertainment industry. It seems that you've already made up your mind. Daisy lowered her gaze. I want to rely on myself just like you. I want to be able to make my own money and be independent. Maisie laughed and put the clothes in the luggage back into the closet. It's a good thing that you have such an idea. As your mom, I'll support all your decisions. Mom, Nolace said the same thing to me too. Maisie stopped moving and looked back at her. Whenever Nolace was mentioned, Daisy's eyes would light up. He told me that no matter what I do, he'll always support me. Mom, if I were to tell you that I want to marry him, would you support me too? Daisy was not very certain when she put the question forward. She knew that her father did not like Nolace, but Colton and Waylon had already accepted him, so she believed that her parents would also accept him someday. Maisie closed the door of the closet and turned to look at her. Your relationship is yours to decide. If you want to marry him, I'll always support you. Daisy was stunned for a moment. Really? But Dad. Maisie stepped forward and caressed her cheek. Duplicity is your father's specialty. He might say he doesn't agree with your relationship, but will he really disagree with your choice? He didn't agree to let you get engaged to Nolace so soon because he doesn't want you two to step into marriage so hastily and without any preparation. Besides, if you were to get engaged to him before the Knowles Group could gain a firm foothold in the business world, he would be deemed by the public as a man who married you for the Goldman's background, and outsiders would never recognize his efforts. Chapter 1849. Daisy pursed her lips as her eyes turned bloodshot. Maisie wiped the corners of her eyes lightly with her fingertips. Daisy, it's not that your father denies Nala's strength. He's giving him the chance to perform only because he has high expectations for him. Daisy lowered her gaze and smiled. I understand that now. Thank you, Mom. Aren't you tired from the flight? You should have a good rest first. I'll leave you alone now. Maisie left the bedroom upon saying that. She closed the door and turned around, only to see Nolan leaning against the wall waiting for her. Maisie walked toward him. Are you eavesdropping on my conversation with our daughter? Nolan turned his face away and complained a little emotionally, you start to ignore me as soon as our daughter comes back. She smiled and pulled his tie. Who are you talking about? He replied instantly, you. Nolan, the older you get, the more childish you become. Maisie approached him. It seems that you need to be taught a lesson? Nolan hugged her, buried his face in her shoulders, and chuckled. Then what does my wife plan to do to me? She pinched his chin. Let's talk about your future son, in law first. Nolan was rendered speechless. The next day, #the Goldman's daughter, Daisy, returns to Zlokova #. Daisy Vanderbilt's come back #. Daisy fans club #. Daisy occupied 3 of the hottest topics on Google Trends, and she seemed to be announcing her return to the entertainment industry in a very high-profile manner. After withdrawing from the entertainment industry for so long, many of her fans were still there to welcome her at the airport when she returned to Zlokova. That was a very rare thing to see in showbiz. After all, celebrities who had retired from the circle would fail to maintain their popularity after such a long time, which would cause their fans not to follow them anymore, let alone welcome them at the airport. Daisy could be regarded as the only artist in the history of showbiz who had retired from the industry for so long but was still loved by many fans. Especially after the photos of Daisy coming out of the airport were exposed, many netizens commented one after another. Some girls were good looking when they were young, but their appearance would go downhill as they grew up. Daisy's beauty was consistent from childhood to adulthood. She had inherited Nolan's appearance and Maisie's charm. She even looked out of this world when she appeared in public with her bare face. At Tenet Media, Daisy sat in the office and waited. The staff knew that she was the daughter of the Goldmans and did not dare neglect her. They were very respectful and enthusiastic when around her. Daisy felt rather helpless. After all, she could not stop her fans from welcoming her at the airport. But the point was that she got photographed by the paparazzi and was catapulted onto Google Trends list of hot topics. She did not expect trying to keep a low profile to be this difficult. Ms. Vanderbilt. Seeing that the chairman of the company came in through the door with his secretary, Daisy got out of her seat. The chairman of Tenet Media stepped forward and took the initiative to reach out for her hand as a gesture. "Thank you very much for choosing our agency. I brought your contract with me. You can go through all the terms, and if you don't have any issue with its content, you can sign it at any time." The secretary placed the contract on the desk. Daisy sat back down, read the contract carefully, and was a little surprised. "Sir, these aren't terms that a newcomer should have, are they? The contract of a newcomer would not list out all those benefits. Random resources would be allocated to a newcomer within their first 5 years in the agency. Their success depended on their luck and strength. If there was no improvement after those 5 years, the contract would automatically be terminated. But this was a high-level contract, and it was worth a lot. This kind of treatment would only be given to S and A tier celebrities." The chairman of Tenet chuckled. "Ms. Vanderbilt, you were a child star, so you have experience in filming, and you have many regular fans, so there's no need for us to start from the very beginning when it comes to you. Our agency will arrange a manager for you and also provide you with suitable resources. I believe that you'll not let me down." What Tenet Media lacked most at this moment were excellent artists. It took a long time to cultivate new talented individuals. Excellent and experienced entertainers would not require the company to spend more effort on cultivating them, could act independently, and could make money for the company. To highly competitive entertainment companies, these celebrities had always been the preferred choice. Chapter 1850. A good artist, as long as they could put out masterpieces and keep their relevance, would be popular in any entertainment agency, even if they changed from one agency to another. After all, deals were all made because of the benefits that came along. Daisy was about to sign the contract, but that was when she remembered something and asked all of a sudden, "Can I name a request?" The chairman paused and nodded. "No problem, as long as it's reasonable and compliant." She named her request without any hesitation. "I want to have the final say when it comes to choosing the script that I'll get in the future." The chairman originally thought that she would make a list of some difficult requests, so he did not expect it to be such a matter. Thus, he agreed to it readily, even without thinking about it. At noon, the secretary brought Daisy to see the manager. Daisy followed the secretary along the corridor, looking around. They kept all the famous films, television posters, and a group photo of all the employees within the company behind glass cupboards. She turned around and asked the secretary how she should address him. And the secretary replied to her with a smile. "I'm Billy Gray, and you can call me Mr. Gray." Probably out of curiosity, Daisy asked again, "My manager, is it easy to get along with him?" Billy was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled. "Don't worry, Mr. Charlie Johnson came over to work for us from Zester Media. He has a lot of experience, and the artists who followed him back then are basically all S and A tier celebrities. Nowadays, including you, only 3 celebrities are under his management." Daisy narrowed her eyes. She felt that Billy was answering her questions lightly while avoiding all the important points. He did not say whether they would get along well or not. However, judging from his slightly embarrassed expression, it could be seen that this agent might not be the easiest person to get along with. She asked again, "Why does he only have to manage so few artists?" Billy replied, "Mr. Johnson is only responsible for managing the top-tier artists of our company. Tenet has just started, so the company has only 2 top-tier artists." After saying that, he added with a smile, "However, Mr. Vanderbilt, I believe that you'll be able to move up the ranking and become one of the top-tier ones in no time." When facing these flattering words, Daisy only gave off a smile and did not utter a single word. The chairman was extremely polite with me just now, and Mr. Gray is speaking so respectfully to me. In addition to my popularity in the industry, it's more due to my special identity. Sure enough, what Aunt Zyla said to me at their estate is true. My identity will always be the elephant in the room wherever I go, and it's difficult to change many things that I want to be changed. Even if I want to rely on myself instead of the Goldmans, in Bassburg, as long as I'm still the daughter of the legendary Nolan Goldman, no one will dare to reject me so easily due to Dad's influence. The two stopped at the office of the management department, and before they entered the office, a stack of documents smashed on the door, and an infuriated voice followed it. James Tell, I didn't boost your reputation and make you a top-tier artist for you to play a poser in the industry. If you refuse to restrain your temperament, go home and continue to be that filthy rich baby that you've always been. Billy picked up the documents on the floor, looking all embarrassed, and knocked on the door helplessly. Mr. Johnson. Daisy glanced into the room. The man behind the desk was wearing a brown leather jacket and a black turtleneck shirt, and he looked about 30 years old. He did not look handsome enough to be categorized as eye candy. He had a neat cut, resolute, tough-looking facial features, and a tanned complexion, which made him look like a tough guy. Especially his deep eye sockets and sharp gaze, and when coupled with his profound aura, he would leave others inexplicably in awe. It felt like saying no to him would be a difficult task. Mr. Gray. Charlie slightly restrained his expression. Is there anything that I can help you with? Billy glanced at the long-haired man on the couch wearing a peaked cap and said with a smile, the chairman asked you to manage another artist. These are her details. There's no need for that. I know who she is. Charlie pulled out a chair and sat down, but did not respond to the order instantly. He took out a cigarette and lit it expressionlessly. I won't do it,